My name is Layla Diba. I'm an art historian and curator and collector, and I specialize in Islamic art, but more specifically the art of 19th and 20th century Iran. And I've done a lot of research looking at the bridges between the 19th century and the 20th century in Iran. Through various media, through photography particularly. I'm a child of two cultures, both American and Iranian. And that has defined, I think, my life and my work. So that is Layla Diba. An original, compelling, difficult, emotional, harrowing, a humanist. I believe I was aware of his work before 2008, but I was very involved in my own field of 19th century art at that time. So it took a meeting with Shirin Neshat and Nikki Najumi to have me focus on his work and to remember that my husband had actually bought a work directly from Mohassess back in the 1990s. So that is my clearest memory of reacquainting with Mohassess, and particularly through the work that we owned, which was called A Letter from Shiraz, which in a way symbolizes his career and his role as an artist, as it depicts a clearly 17th century young man who is a poet and a writer, but whose feet have been cut. And so the symbolism is very much Mohassess and his vision. And from them, I became more and more acquainted through the Iran Modern exhibition and the works of the Mohassess Trust, and essentially, reviewing the literature and his works for my own research and my own interests. My acquaintance with Ardeshir, in a way, postdates 2008, because there are many approaches to looking at his work, and the one I took, which was to look at the way he used the Qajar era, 19th century photography and painting in his own work to critique the current regime, the Pahlavi regime. So I looked at that very closely, and I looked at his family history, the history of his childhood and his parents, and because many of the drawings that were influenced by this Qajar iconography had inscriptions on them written by Ardeshir. So they were autobiographical as well. So I think that gave me a kind of perception of his personality and the history, his own history, where the art came from and where the power of his art came from. Many of the works in the Library of Congress series, Life in Iran, if you look closely, at the bottom is a handwritten inscription, and these are captions that he wrote that explain the scene. Well, I think it's fascinating that his father was a judge, and he, I think, was very critical or ambivalent about his father's role as a judge. And as you look at some of those ink drawings, he clothes them in the Qajar costume and the Qajar nobility, but he's talking about his father and his role in the justice system and, the punishment of criminals and, or perceived as criminals. So I think it's very autobiographical, and that's that looking through those inscriptions and looking through the iconography, you understand that. Well, if you look at the whole arc of Mohassess's career and his themes, I think in the later years, don't forget he was isolated in a little 8x10 room with his memories and distant from his home and dealing with physical and emotional issues. So I think that the works are no longer as specific as they were at the beginning of his career. At the beginning of his career, he had very specific targets. And so, as I explained earlier, though, I always found an autobiographical element, often, if you think about his childhood and his life. But I think that in the later years, because of his circumstances, the works get more general and certainly more a sense of color and fantasy and maybe a stronger sense of sort of burlesque in some of his renderings. So my feeling is, as I said, they are more distant from his original, very specific subject matter and become more universal in their meanings and interpretations we make of them. The work becomes less culturally specific and more distant from the original biographical events. It becomes more universal and in a way was a precursor, I think, to many of the questions and issues that artists are dealing with today about the body, about gender, about power.